on Saturday, June 21st, 2014, 11:45 p.m. to 5 a.m. on Sunday, June the 22nd, 2014. I joined CoolTan Arts on a fun guided midnight walk through South London. We stopped along the way for talks and games on mad buildings, night working, and surrealism, and the anxious city. Now, the walk or event was part of the Anxiety Arts Festival of London 2014. Now, the CoolTan Arts Largactyl Shuffle is a guided, stigma-busting cultural walk designed to encourage mental and physical well-being through art, exercise, humour and history. Although I'm a carer of someone suffering mental health difficulties, there's always more room to learn about mental health, and CoolTan's Largactyl Shuffle walks are great not only to learn about mental health, but also about the City of London. I actually have done a video blog for one of the shuffle walks last year, but I think it was about time I joined another walk with them, and they are so much fun and it's great, and it's a great adventure. So while I was on the train watching the sunset, I was looking forward to the walk, although I was a little anxious on what to expect by walking at night. Now, before I continue with this, this was CoolTan's 8th Largactyl Midnight Shuffle Walk. But what is CoolTan Arts all about? CoolTan Arts believes mental well-being is enhanced by the power of creativity. It's a charity run by and for adults with mental distress. Now, they run a varied programs of creative workshops from their Vibrant Arts Centre in Southwark's lively Walworth Road near Elephant and Castle, and these include visual arts, textiles, digital arts, poetry, video and performing arts. Now, their activities include exhibitions, public art projects and wellbeing walks, which help break down the stigma of mental distress. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, this walk is run in conjunction with the Anxiety Arts Festival London 2014, and the Anxiety Arts Festival is basically a London-wide arts festival curated by the Mental Health Foundation, taking place at multiple venues throughout June 2014. The festival explores anxiety, looking at its causes and how it affects all our lives, and how it can act as a creative force. So you may have guessed that this walk had quite a lot to learn about anxiety and mental health, not only from what we are being told, but how we are experiencing the walk. Oddly enough, though, I had an argument with someone before I got to the walk, and unfortunately, London does have some people, or quite a lot of people, who are homeless, most of no fault of their own. However, on this occasion, this person decided to blame me for his problems, and an argument ensued. Now, this left me feeling anxious, although I did not know it at the time. I then calmed down and headed towards the walk and spoke to some people who turned up in order to find out, just to find out the expectations of the walk, really. CoolTan volunteer walkers and Michelle Barrier, the CEO of CoolTan Arts, explained at around about 11:45 p.m. what the walk was about, and they told us about health and safety, and we filled in some forms to check our health, since some of the walks can be tiring. But the volunteer walkers tend to walk at a moderate to slow pace in order for people to catch up. Michelle also talked to us about how she experienced anxiety in the past, and felt the walk should not only be about learning about anxiety, but also about celebrating it by going through places on the walk what might be quite dark, or where we would not usually go at night. Now, our first part of the walk stopped past some of the people's favourite building, which is the I think it's known as the Xmas Tree, or the Xmas Building. Where Michelle explained a bit more about the building. We then walked towards Red Cross Way, and we were told about someone called Octavia Hill, who was responsible for being the first person to develop social housing. Oddly enough, thinking about Octavia Hill made me wonder just a bit more about people who are homeless in London, especially those who have mental health problems. One of the volunteer lead walkers, I think her name was Lou, she spoke about the Winchester geese, who were also prostitutes, probably around 15th century onwards. This is because they were licensed by the Bishop of Winchester to work within the liberty of the clink. And this is where such women and many other poor people were buried in a place called Crossbones, which is now off Red Cross Way. Now Crossbones is a post-medieval disused burial ground in the borough of Southwark, South London. The more Lou explained about who was buried at the burial site, the more I thought about how easy it is for destitute people to become victims of society, even in these days. It made me feel a bit anxious, and CoolTan kindly handed out notes to people where we could tie around the gate and write down thoughts to those who we have lost. I tied one myself. We continued to walk onwards and reached the St. George the Martyr Church, which is opposite the Borough Tube Station, and we were given a talk by another lead walker called Tim about Charles Dickens and how he used to walk the streets of London talking to the poor or down and out about their experiences in London, so he could write about these experiences in one of his books, or several of his books. We were told the reason why Charles Dickens moved to this place because his dad was in prison, and then we began to have fun with our first activity as we split into 8 groups. Now, since it was night time, this activity centered on matching the description of what kind of people work at night onto pictures, and I watched how each group was solving the puzzles and also talked to some of the volunteers. We then moved onwards, and we were told about the walkie-talkie building and how it literally melted a car by reflecting light onto the vehicle. We continued to walk further on, crossing quite a few roads, but I was glad to see that the guided walkers were helping us cross the road safely at night. We then walked down the underpass and into the centre of the roundabout at Elephant and Castle. We were then told about the Michael Faraday Memorial and the meaning of the reflective building behind us. There are many interesting facts about electromagnetic inventions. Next, we heard from Ola, who is another of the lead walkers, and she set us our second activity. And this was on each of us in groups discussing what anxiety is, and then showing in some form how to combat anxiety. Now, within my group, I decided to take the lead and explained to the group on how to combat anxiety, and each person within the group also gave their ideas as well. My idea was that we can reassure the person who is anxious, and we should show this reassurance by basically doing a group hug in our group. Next, we walked towards Elephant and Castle Marketplace, where it got very dark, and a few of us began to use the free NHS torches provided to us by CoolTan Arts. I didn't shine my torch that much, but I did feel anxious of the dark places, even though I was in a group, and at that point my mind flashed back to where I had the argument with this homeless person, and I wondered if I was showing anxiety before I actually got to the walk, and I thought it was how interesting, although it did leave me in a bit of a bad mood at that time. We then crossed the road, and Michelle Barrier talked to us about the zebra building. I think it was a zebra building, and she talked a bit more about the problem of council housing. She mentioned the large fans. I think the large fans at the top of the building, which I never actually paid much attention to beforehand. We then walked just a bit further on, and we were told about the Labour HQ building, which used to be situated around the area. I think it was the John Smith building. I'm not too sure. Within minutes, a sound actually ran out, just like this. sound made me feel slightly anxious for what it was, and I was slightly proud with my quick thinking to actually record the sound. After a while, we ended up at the CoolTan Arts HQ on Walworth Road, where we relaxed after a long walk and heard a bit more about CoolTan Arts activities and how they actually formed. CoolTan explained one of their latest projects, which was the Food for Mood book and the poetry book, which they also have for sale. I think you can actually buy them online. But talking about poetry, we were treated to some poetry by Peter Cox, and here is some of the poetry now.
My sickness came, and now I was distraught. What could I say? Then woe is me, a private doctor later said, you're anxious, but you're well inside your head. We're all quite anxious, and you are not ill. You're certified not anxious. Here's my bill. I'm private. Pay at once. Do not delay, or bailiffs will be taking stuff away. Not anxious. God, that doctor was so wrong. I got more sickness pay before too long. Man applies for universal suicidal credit. We think you're suicidal, so we'll pay. But when you're feeling better, you must say. He did. The suicidal pay then stopped. A heartless course of action to adopt, which made his mood abominably low, and that is why he killed himself, you know. And
Basically, CoolTan Arts' main aim is to try and keep people who are suffering mental distress out of hospital with the use of harnessing their power of creativity and art. Another aim of CoolTan Art is to raise and highlight what mental illness and mental health is. They also help in combating mental health stigma. After a rest, we then continued on with our adventure into the night and past the building where Charlie Chaplin was born. We then moved up to Albany Road, and Michelle Barrier talked about Richard Masuria, who used to help CoolTan Arts with filming production. Richard Masuria was sadly killed in a cycling accident on Monday the 18th of November. The accident involved a collision with a tipper truck which took place at a busy junction of Camberwell Road and Albany Road. CoolTan Arts are hoping to get a memorial for Richard. We then continued to our walk and moved to Burgess Park, where we had another activity from a lovely Italian lead walker called Ava, and her activity involved people standing in a line holding up a letter where we guessed what the letter would form in a word, and I think it spelled out something to do with psychiatry. They would then continue to talk about each letter, also what the letter symbolised and its meaning, on how we work in the City of London and how we need to recognise our own mental health. We then stopped for a moment to look at the sunrise. However, we had some uninvited guests, which made me feel a little anxious because the uninvited guests were perhaps a little more than drunk, if you could say. Although they did enjoy our walk, perhaps a bit too much, and they did calm down. Perhaps this is what happens a lot during the early hours of Sunday morning. We do not often get to see the sunrise in the morning, and it was one of the golden moments of the walk. Since we're often so busy making a living, thinking of the future, that we tend to forget about our present. We forget about the now. If we just stop only for the moment, we can feel the beauty of nature, which is always all around us. Our next stop was at Camberwell Green, where we stopped at the sculptural bench created by the artist Rosin Daskalov, and this bench was made from oak timber. The bench design is based on the theme of reconnecting with each other and with nature, hence what I've mentioned before. And this is situated next to a ginkgo tree planted by CoolTan Arts to commemorate World Mental Health Day 2011. The bench creates a place of calm contemplation for all to enjoy. One of the last CoolTan Arts lead walkers then talked about the surrealist movement, on its idea of the unconscious and its importance of dreams bursting into reality. As one of the walkers sat on the bench, she read out a lovely poem which I could not capture at that time, and she spoke about how the surrealists link creativity with mental health. Eventually, last destination being the Maudsley Hospital. As daylight was all around, my anxiousness began to fade as night finally went away. But then also the excitement was gone as well. We were all congratulated for staying with the 5-hour walk, and we stopped for our second set of refreshments at the Maudsley Chapel. My final review of the CoolTan walk is that the event was an amazing experience, and it was well worth the time to make it there. I can see not only the connection with other people on the walk, but also the connection of learning about mental health, learning about the city you live, learning about yourself and how you experience things, plus learning about the hard work CoolTan Arts are doing when it comes to mental health. You can check out more on CoolTan Arts off their site being www.cooltanarts.org.uk. I'd like to say thank you for watching and hope to catch you next time.